They expected his final words to be about heaven. Instead, he asked for his dog. The Vatican was silent, not the ceremonial hush of holy ground, but a heavy, aching stillness, the kind that drapes itself over ancient walls just before something ends. The sun rose behind the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, but its light seemed dimmer, as though it too felt the weight of the moment. The birds perched high in the old cypress trees did not sing. Even the fountains whispered softer that morning. Pope Francis was dying. His breaths were shallow, his voice a faint echo of the warmth it once carried. His hands trembled, his eyes no longer followed the movement of those around him. But he was awake, and he asked for something. Not a priest, not a final speech, not a mass. "Please bring Esteban," he said. The aides hesitated. Doctors glanced at each other in confusion. They thought perhaps he was hallucinating. But his gaze was steady, piercing, clear. "Bring Esteban, my dog." One of the cardinals blinked, uncertain. "Holy Father, your dog?" Francis nodded, slowly. "He's family. He needs to know I'm leaving." No one argued. No one had ever seen him like this. Not as the Pope, but as Jorge. A man, an old man, wanting only to say goodbye to his dog. The room fell still. Doctors stepped back. Protocol collapsed because at the edge of life, titles don't matter. Only love does. And in that moment, the most powerful man in the Catholic Church was just a man, waiting to say farewell to his most loyal friend. Esteban was not a famous dog. He had no Instagram, no interviews, no papal photo shoots. He was a mutt. Short fur, uneven tail, ears that twitched more than they stood. He wagged in rhythm, not in greeting. He was the Pope's best-kept secret. Francis had found him in the Vatican gardens 6 years before, limping through the rose paths, thin, collarless, a survivor of Rome's alleyways. Security wanted to remove him. Staff suggested animal services, but Francis had looked into the dog's eyes and said, "He knows pain. Let him stay," and stay he did. The next day and the next, until by the end of the month he was no longer a stray. He was part of the silence, part of the walks, part of the man. They never made it public. "The world doesn't need to know everything I love," Francis once told a trusted cardinal. "Some things are between souls." Esteban became his morning shadow, the quiet heartbeat beside him in moments of reflection. No barking, no tricks, just presence. He lay at the Pope's feet while he prayed, watched as Francis scribbled in journals, nudged his knee on hard days, and never asked for anything except to stay close. And now Esteban waited, asleep beneath the olive tree they had claimed as theirs, unaware that his human was dying just a few hundred feet away inside the apostolic palace. Clocks ticked louder than usual. Every second felt like a countdown. Pope Francis waited, eyes closed, lips parted, but not yet gone. One of his aides ran breathless down the marble halls, clutching a phone. "We found the dog. He's in the garden, sleeping, but safe." The doctors, the cardinals, the staff, none of them knew how to handle this. They had planned for papal succession, for global mourning, but not for this. A dying pope waiting for his dog. Orders were given quietly. Barriers usually meant for diplomats were open. The inner gates of the Vatican, so rarely touched by animals, were unlocked with trembling hands. Meanwhile, under the olive tree, Esteban stirred. Something shifted in the air. He lifted his head, sniffed the wind, and knew. He rose slowly, as if pulled by memory, not command. The guards tried to lead him, but Esteban didn't need direction. He ran, past fountains, past stained glass and shadows, through centuries of history. His paws struck the stone in rhythm with a fading heartbeat. Inside the Pope's room, the oxygen machine hummed. Francis opened his eyes, barely, and whispered, "He's coming." No one had told him, but he knew. The room held its breath when the door opened. Doctors, aides, priests all stood still. And there, padding softly on his own, was Esteban. He paused in the doorway, tilted his head, ears twitching. Then, without hesitation, he walked straight to the bed. Pope Francis turned his head, eyes struggling to focus, But when he saw Esteban, they glowed with something no medication could bring: peace. The old dog rested his paws on the side of the bed, whined gently, like a question. "Are you okay?" Francis reached out, hand trembling, but Esteban moved forward, pressing his muzzle under the Pope's palm. And there they stayed, a man dying, a dog simply being, and an unspoken vow being honored. A nurse wiped her eyes. A cardinal turned away, too moved to watch. Francis whispered, barely a breath, "You kept your promise. You stayed with me till the end." He closed his eyes and smiled. Then he whispered one final request. "Don't let him go back to the street. Promise me he'll always be loved." One of the aides stepped forward, knees shaking. "He will, Holy Father. I swear to you, Esteban will have a home. Always." And then Pope Francis took his final breath. Not during a mass, not with cameras flashing, but with his fingers tangled in the fur of the one soul who never cared about the hat, the power, or the history, only the man. The bells of St. Peter's rang at dawn, not in celebration, but in mourning. The world began to cry. News outlets flashed. Pope Francis has died at 88. Tributes poured in from presidents, kings, imams, rabbis. Monuments lit in white and gold. Flags lowered. Masses scheduled. Pilgrimages planned. But in the Vatican, Esteban refused to move. For hours after Francis's final breath, the dog lay curled beside the bed, not making a sound, not accepting food, just being. One of the cardinals tried to lift him. Esteban growled softly, not in threat but in pain. "Let him be," said the Pope's doctor. "He's mourning." 2 days later, the world watched as Pope Francis was laid to rest. The funeral, held in the heart of the Vatican, was solemn, sacred, deeply human. Thousands filled the square. Millions watched in silence. Heads of state, religious leaders, pilgrims. But all eyes fell on something unexpected. There at the edge of the platform lay a brown dog, quiet, still, watching. Esteban, the dog no one knew, the companion from the gardens, the one Pope Francis asked to see with his last breath. He hadn't been brought by design. He had simply walked there, as he had every morning, beside the Pope. Cameras caught him as the casket was lifted. Esteban stood, took 3 slow steps, then lay down again. The image, a dog, a coffin, a bond stronger than titles or time, spread across the world. Hours later, the Vatican released a statement. Per his final request, the Holy Father was accompanied in his final moments by his dog, Esteban. May we all love with such quiet loyalty. No speeches were needed, no explanations. Because in a world that followed Pope Francis for a decade, this was the clearest message he ever gave. In the end, love is simple, and the only thing that matters is who stays with you when you have nothing left to give. The day after the funeral, St. Peter's Square was quieter than usual. The crowds had gone, the bells no longer rang. But Esteban was still there. He lay beneath the same tree where he and Francis had once walked together, his eyes open, but he didn't move much. He didn't chase birds. He didn't respond to voices. He was waiting, listening, grieving. People began leaving gifts, not at the main altar, but by the garden fence. Candles, flowers, childlike drawings of a pope and a dog under an olive tree, and notes. "Thank you, Esteban. You were his last prayer. You showed us how to love without words." The Vatican released a second message. Esteban will remain in the Vatican gardens, loved and cared for by those who walk beside the Holy Father. He is not just a dog, he is part of the legacy. A small space near the Pope's favorite bench was soon marked with a bronze plate, not for show but for memory. It read, "Here they sat. One spoke to millions, the other listened to only one. Both loved in silence. Thank you for experiencing this story. A reminder that at the end of life, it's not titles, wealth, or power that define us, but the quiet, unwavering love we share with those who stay when all else fades." Pope Francis' final moments with Esteban teach us that loyalty needs no grand stage, and that love, in its purest form, is simple, silent, and profound. May we all cherish the ones who walk beside us, especially when we have nothing left to give. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the beauty in small, loyal acts of love, I invite you to support more heartfelt storytelling by subscribing. Your support helps keep these stories alive and shared with the world. Thank you for being part of this journey.